Hello everyone, welcome to Akademi Ekonometri. Today in economics course we are going to cover the topics of week 2, and these are the topics we are going to cover. First of all, we will cover the shifts in production possibilities frontier. Then I will try to explain the comparative advantage and the absolute advantage, and of course the difference between these two concepts. And then we will try to understand what's terms of trade and how trade makes countries and people better off, wealthier. Finally, we will try to understand the relationship between the saving decision, investments, capital goods, and the future growth. Let's start with the shift in the PPF. We know what's PPF from the previous week. So if the PPF were to expand outward, some previously unattainable good combinations would now be possible to produce. We know that PPF is showing us the maximum amount of goods that we can produce, and it gives us the several combinations with these goods. But sometimes we can change our assumptions. Remember the assumptions of the PPF model. The first two assumptions were the fixed resources and the fixed technology. Right now we are trying to ease these two assumptions. We will say what happens if we have new resources, if we have more resources, or if we have more technology. In this case, the PPF will shift, but PPF can shift in two different ways. So if the change in the resources and the technology affects the production of one good, PPF will shift from one way only. But if the new resources or technology affect the production of both goods, in this case, the PPF will shift from two ways. Let's see what I mean, two ways and one way. So as you know from the previous week, we created a model PPF and we used two goods to simplify the realistic world. So in this case, we have pizza on y-axis and we have wings on the x-axis. So we create our special PPF. In this PPF, we have the specialization. That's why we have a bow-shaped PPF. And now we will try to expand our resources or the technology, and we will try to use that increase in resources and the technology in only the production of one good. So as you can see, the maximum amount of pizza produced here is 100, and the maximum amount of wings produced here is 300. And right now the country is at point A, and currently it's producing 70 pizza and 200 wings. So we will add new technology in this country, and this technology is going to be used only in the pizza production. If this is the case, the PPF will shift from one way only, and it will only increase the maximum amount of pizza production, but the maximum amount of wings production will stay the same. So that's why the PPF will increase from 100 to 120, and as you can see, this dark purple line will be our new PPF, our final PPF. So if the country is producing producing efficiently, the country will be at point B. At the final point B, the country is producing 80 pizza and 220 wings. As you can see, even if the technological increase is affecting the pizza production, this country is producing more wings compared to the before. Before it was producing 200 wings, but right now it's producing 220 wings. Why is that happening? The simplistic explanation of this movement is this country is gaining a lot of or gaining more efficiency in the pizza production, but instead of using this increased efficiency in the pizza production only, it is transferring that efficiency, some part of the efficiency gain, to the wings production. So what I mean is, this country might have been on a point like point C here, as the mouse pointer shows. So if this was the case, this country was going to produce 90 pizza and again the same amount of wings. But instead of being at point C, this country choose to be on point B. So not only the pizza production is increasing, but also the wings production is increasing. That's possible movement. So the basic explanation is we are transferring the efficiency gain, some part of the efficiency gain, into the wings production. That's why we can be on point B. So right now, let's see the other kind of shift. In this case, the technology, let's assume that the technology is increasing, but that increase is going to affect the production of both goods. It's going to affect the production of pizza and the production of wings. If this is the case, our regular PPF is going to shift from both ways, from two ways. So the maximum amount of pizza will increase, but at the same time, the maximum amount of pizza that this country can produce will increase as well. So that's why we call these kind of shifts as two-way shift or shift from both sides. And in the final step, this country is going to be on a point like C. So now I'm going to give you a couple of sentences, and for each sentence, I will request you to tell me which one is true or false. Let's start. The first sentence is saying that point A represents the amount of cars and bicycles that will be sold. Of course, this is a PPF, and this is about bicycles and cars. But as you can understand from the name of PPF, it is showing us something about production, not about how much we sold, how much we sell for bicycles and cars. So that's why the PPF is not telling us what the amount of cars and bicycles that will be sold, but instead it's showing us the amount of cars and bicycles that is produced. That's why this sentence is false. The second sentence is, as you move from point F to G, the price of bicycles increases. So again, we are talking about bicycles and cars, but remember, in the production possibilities frontier model, we don't have prices yet. So we are only talking about the quantities or the production quantities. So no prices yet. That's why when we move from point F to G, we cannot talk about the prices. What we can talk about is, we can talk about the production opportunity cost of bicycles. Since we are producing more of bicycles and less of cars, we will of course use the law of increasing relative cost, and we will say when we move from F to G, producing one more bicycle is always increasing. As a result, this sentence is also false. Number 3, movement along the curve from point C to A shows us the opportunity cost of producing more bicycles. If we move from point C to A, we can easily see that we are producing more of cars and less of bicycles. That's why when we want to talk about the opportunity cost, we have to talk the opportunity cost of cars, not bicycles. That's why this sentence is also false. Number 4, if we have high unemployment, then the curve shifts in. First of all, you need to understand, or you need to remember the definition of production possibilities frontier. Production possibilities frontier is giving you the combinations of goods that you can produce with fixed resources and fixed technology. Another condition is you have to use all of these resources and the technology. So you will be on an efficient point. So let's assume there is a dot here and the country is producing on that dot A. So if we are on that point dot A, that means we are using all of the labor and the capital and other inputs in that country. But if we have an increase in the unemployment, that means we are not using all of the labor force in our country. So basically, we need to move in. So instead of being a point like A, which is on the line, we will be on a point like B here, which will not be on the PPF. But the important point here is PPF will be just stay intact. It's not going to move. Why? Because the production possibilities frontier is showing you the best you can do. It's not telling you where you are right now. So PPF will not shift in, but the point we are producing right now will of course move from point A to point B, somewhere inside the PPF. We will not be on the PPF anymore. So if we have high unemployment, that means we are not using all of the labor. We will not be on the PPF. Number 5, if an improved process for manufacturing cars is introduced, then the entire curve will shift. So in this case, as we know that the increase in the technology is used only in the car's production. That's why we know that the maximum amount of cars can be produced will increase, but the maximum amount of bicycles that can be produced will stay intact. It will stay the same. So that's why the PPF will shift from one side only, and the final PPF will be something like that. That's why this statement is false also. So the next topic is trade. At the end of this part of the topic, I'm trying to explain you why trade is really important and why trade makes countries better off and wealthier. But before covering the trade, you need to understand what's markets. Markets are usually physical or non-physical places that can bring buyers and sellers together to exchange goods and services. You can not only exchange goods, but also you can exchange services. So trade happens in the market, but the voluntary exchange of goods and services between two or more parties is called trade. So the important word here, or the key word here, is the voluntary. You cannot force someone to make trade with you. And the last sentence is really important. You don't engage in trade if it makes you worse off. That's really logical. So at the end of the trade, if you're becoming worse off, you're not going to make that trade. Therefore, trade only occurs if both parties feel they gain from the trade. Actually, the last portion of this sentence is not 100% accurate. So in some cases, these are kind of extreme cases, but in some cases, one party can be indifferent and the other party can be better off. In this kind of situations, trade can happen as well. We are going to cover this part of extreme case at the end of the trade makes countries better off topic. So let's use the specialization and the trade, and let's try to create a simplistic model, and let's try to understand how trade is going to make countries better off. Improvements in technology and more resources can make an economy more productive. We know that before. But right now, we will use specialization and trade, and it will create wealth, more wealth in the country, and it will make countries better off. And specifically, specialization and trade allows countries to produce on the PPF line, but these two concepts also allows countries to consume above the PPF line. You will understand when you see the graphics. So give me a couple minutes. First, let's build our model. Again, we are going to use two goods. These two goods are pizza and wings. And we will assume that instead of countries, we will assume that we have two different peoples and different abilities in the production of pizza and the wings. So these people are Deborah Winger and Mike Piazza. And as you can see, the numbers of the production are given for each of them. Deborah Winger produces 60 pizza and 120 wings, my pizza is producing 24 pizza and 72 wings. And the technology and resources, of course, fixed for both of them. So the first concept that I'm trying to explain you is the absolute advantage. Absolute advantage, in my opinion, can be explained easily with an example. So in our example, in our simplistic model, we have two persons, and these people are actually producing different amounts of pizza and wings. And let's cover the pizza part first. For example, when we compare the production amount of pizza for Deborah and Mike, I can easily see that Deborah is producing more pizza. So just comparing these two numbers, I will say that Deborah has the absolute advantage in the pizza production because she's producing more. We can do the same analysis for the wings. I know that Deborah is producing 120 wings, but Mike is producing only 72 wings. Again, we will conclude the same result, and we will say that Deborah has an absolute advantage in wings production. So as you can see, Deborah has absolute advantage in the production of both pizza and wings. When we are talking about the absolute advantage, and when we have two people or two countries like this, a single country or a single person might have absolute advantage in the production of both goods. In a couple minutes, I will introduce you a new concept, which is comparative advantage, and it is not going to be the same case in the comparative advantage. So if one person has a comparative advantage, for example, in pizza, the other person will have the comparative advantage in the wings production. So that's a really important difference between absolute advantage and the comparative advantage. In the absolute advantage, we are only comparing the numbers, but in the comparative advantage, we have to use something else. And using that something else will ensure that only one person has an advantage or comparative advantage in pizza, and the other person will have the comparative advantage in the production of wings, for example. So for now, I want to show you the without trade situation. We know that their production amounts are like this, but instead of staying on the extreme cases, I will assume that they are producing somewhere on the middle of their individual PPFs. And that's why I say that Deborah is producing 40 pizza and 40 wings. And of course, since there is no trade, she has to consume whatever she produces. That's why she's consuming 40 pizza and 40 wings. Same thing happens for Mike. He has to consume whatever he's producing. That's why Mike is producing 80 pizza and consuming 18 pizza, and he's also producing 18 wings and consuming 18 wings as well. So without specialization and trade, you have to consume whatever you produce. That's the important part. And right now I want to explain you how I end up with these numbers 40, 40, 18, and 18. So I basically picked a point on the middle of their PPF, individual respective PPFs. And as you can see, when I combine the extreme cases, remember 60 and 100 for Mike, 24 and 72, 60 and 100 for Deborah, 24 and 72 for Mike. So instead of staying on these extreme ends, I picked a point on the PPF, and I say that they are producing on these points. Let's say A and B for now. So after that, we are going to kind of force them to make trade, but you know that trade in real life needs to be voluntary. But in our simplistic example, we will force them to trade. But before covering the trade part or the situation with the trade section, we have to understand one more important concept, which is comparative advantage. To explain you the comparative advantage, I usually use an example again. And in this example, I'm going to use Shaq. You know, most of you guys know who is Shaquille O'Neal. He is a really famous retired basketball player. He was really good when he was playing before his retirement, and he was a huge guy. So basically, Shaq made an average of $15 million a year, which makes like $40,000 a day. And since he's a really big guy, instead of playing basketball, he might be a cargo carrier. Since he's a big guy, he can carry a lot of stuff at the same time. But the question is, why did Shaq become a basketball player? The answer relies on the opportunity cost. So again, remember, if we have two choices and if we pick one of it, since we are making a choice, we have to think about the opportunity cost of our choice. So when Shaq chooses to become a basketball player, what is he losing? He's losing $40, $40 per day. But Shaq chooses to be a cargo carrier, he's going to lose $40,000 per day, which is high. Remember from the previous week, if you want to decide which option to choose, you have to either minimize your cost or maximize the valuation. So here, let's try to minimize the cost. And when I say the cost, I'm talking about the opportunity cost. Choosing to be a basketball player has an opportunity cost of $40, and choosing to be a cargo carrier has an opportunity cost of $40,000 per day. So that's why, since the opportunity cost of choosing being basketball player is really low compared to being a cargo carrier, Shaq decided to be a basketball player. So Shaq has the comparative advantage in being a basketball player. But let's say there is another guy and he cannot play basketball as well as Shaq. He is really good in being cargo carrier. So for this person, the opportunity cost to become a basketball player will be really huge because he sucks in basketball. And since he's playing basketball, he's actually losing to become a cargo carrier and make more money. That's why for that person, he has a competitive advantage in being a cargo carrier. So the end result is, first of all, you have to minimize the opportunity cost. And if you have the minimum opportunity cost compared to other person, you have to do that action. For Shaq, being a basketball player has a lower opportunity cost. That's why he's a basketball player. But for another huge guy, he has a lower opportunity cost when he becomes a cargo carrier. That's why he becomes a cargo carrier. So that's the idea. So without the trade, you would have to produce everything you consume. That's what we know already. So you would have to make your own food, clothing, housing, and electronics. But with the trade, you can just specialize in production of something, then you can trade. But of course, which good you need to be specialized in? To decide on this one, you have to, first of all, use the comparative advantage. You have to calculate the opportunity cost of producing each good, and you need to have the lowest opportunity cost in producing of that good. So, for the comparative advantage, the situation in which an individual, business, or country can produce at a lower opportunity cost than a competitor. So basically, we are comparing the opportunity costs with your competitor. And comparative advantage allows gain from trade. That's how we create welfare or increase in welfare from trade. So one more topic to cover. You know the specialization from the previous week, but I want to emphasize on that again. With the specialization, you go to Starbucks to get a coffee. And you go to doctor when you're sick. You don't need to treat yourself, or you don't need to make your own coffee because you're going to Starbucks. So with the specialization, people will choose to produce something, and in that production they have the lowest opportunity cost, so they have the competitive advantage, they specialize in it, and then with the trade you don't need to do everything by yourself. You just specialize whatever you are good at and then you trade. That's our main idea. But of course, trade, according to some politicians or some people, trade has problems as well. So for example, India and China have a competitive advantage relative to US, of course, in labor-intensive goods. If you're using an iPhone, when you turn back of it, you will see that it is designed in California and it is made in China. So why is that? Why it is designed in China, and why they send all of the blueprints of this phone and they produced in China? The answer is USA has a comparative advantage in capital intensive goods, but China has comparative advantage in labor intensive goods. The main reason of that, labor cost in China is really cheap. That's why Apple designs everything in USA, because their human capital is huge. A lot of people are getting educated here, there. They are getting their PhD. They are creating some softwares. So all the design happen in USA, but when it becomes when it's time for the production process, they try to minimize their costs. So they send everything to the China, and Chinese guys just produce that good, that phone. So whatever I'm talking about the outsourcing of jobs. Actually, outsourcing means that you build a new factory in the other country. You give the information, the blueprints, how it's going to be produced, and you do it because of the cheap labor. But the problem with outsourcing is, what if this causes an American worker to lose his job? So the background of that question is actually relates to some other situation. For example, Apple is sending the blueprints of that phone and creating some jobs for Chinese people. But why Apple is not staying in US and creating some jobs for American? So basically, Americans are losing the potential jobs. Or let's say, hypothetically, Apple created his first factory in US, and then he decided to move China for the production process because the labor cost is really cheap. And the workers in that factory is going to lose their jobs. That's why outsourcing of jobs might be a problem. And President Trump is actually criticizing this kind of movement, outsourcing of jobs, and trying to prevent these huge companies to go abroad and produce their products abroad. He's trying to force these companies to stay in US, give tax in US, and create jobs in US. So let's turn back to our simplistic example. Since we know that when we have two parties has to specialize, they have to specialize in producing each one of the goods. So to understand on which production or production of good we have to specialize, first of all, we need to know in which production of the good we have the competitive advantage. To find out this thing, first of all, we have to calculate the opportunity cost, because if you have the lowest opportunity cost, that means that you have the comparative advantage in the production of that good. That's why we are going to calculate the opportunity cost for each person and each product. For Deborah, we know the numbers are 60 and 120. For Mike, the numbers are 24 and 72. Right now, I'm trying to calculate the opportunity cost of one pizza for Deborah only. So Deborah has an option to produce either 60 pizza or 120 wings. So I will simplify these numbers by dividing by 60. So I will say one pizza here, 2 wings here. So producing one pizza has an opportunity cost of 2 wings. You can use this logic, or you can use a second option like that. If the question is asking you the opportunity cost of pizza, put the number of the pizza to the denominator and put the other number, 120, to the numerator. So basically 120 divided by 60 gives me 2 wings. That's the opportunity cost of one pizza for Deborah. And if you make the calculations for the other 3 cells, you will get 3 wings of one opportunity cost of one pizza for Mike is 3 wings, and the other numbers as well. The important point here is, as you can see, 2, the inverse of 2 is 1 over 2. Inverse of 3 is 1 over 3. This is always correct, because we have basically 2 numbers and we are putting one number to the denominator, and on the other part we are putting the same number to the numerator. So these two needs to be always inverse, or the multiplication of these two needs to be 1 all the time. So now let's compare these values. So in the pizza production, I know that Deborah has the lowest cost, because his opportunity cost is 2 wings. That's why Deborah has a comparative advantage in the pizza production, so she has to specialize in the pizza production. So if Deborah is specialized in the pizza production, Mike needs to be specialized in the other good, in the production of other good, which is wing. So let's see if this is really correct. Let's compare the numbers. And if we check the numbers, I can see that 1 over 3 is lower than 1 over 2. So Mike has to specialize in the production of pizza. So this slide is actually explaining whatever I have told in the previous slide, so I'm skipping this slide. So right now, let's add the trait dimension to our model. We have the specialization already. Now I am adding the trait dimension. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the without the trait case on this part, and then I will say with the specialization, Deborah, since she is specialized in the pizza production, she's only producing 60 pizza. And Mike is specialized on the production of wings. He's going to produce only 72 wings. And he's not producing pizza. Deborah is not producing wings because she's specialized in the pizza production. So right now you will see some arbitrary numbers that I choose. I'm going to explain why I choose those numbers, but for now, just assume that these numbers are correct. So what I'm going to say is, I will say Deborah is producing 60 pizza and keeping 41 of it and giving the rest to Mike. So she is giving 90 pizza to Mike. And whatever Mike is doing is she's producing 72 wings, he's producing 72 wings, and he's keeping 25 of it, and he's giving the rest to Deborah, which is 47. So let's compare without the trait and with trait and specialization case. Without the trait, Deborah was producing 40 pizza, consuming 40 pizza, but with the trait, she is producing 60 pizza, but consuming 41 pizza. So there's an increase in the pizza consumption. So 1 plus 1 from the plus 1 from trait. Same thing applies when we compare the wings numbers for the wings. 40, 47 plus 7. This is a gain from the trait. Same thing applies for Mike. So both of the parties gain from the trade. So they are still on the same PPF in terms of production, but in terms of consumption, they can be outside of the trade. Let's see this on the graphic. So remember, Deborah was producing and consuming on the middle of the PPF, but right now, since she's specialized in only pizza production, she's producing on this extreme case, extreme end, point A. But at the end of the trade, she is going to be on a point like C here. So basically, this point C was unattainable before the trade, but with the trade, this point C becomes attainable. So basically, with the specialization and trade, this unattainable points C in two graphics becomes attainable. That's the important part, or that's the gains from the trade. Trade makes countries or people wealthier than before. So in this slide, I'm trying to explain you how did I come with these numbers, 19 and 47. Remember the previous table. In the previous table, I picked this 47, 19. I decided how much they will consume and how much they will give to each other. So how did I come up with these numbers? I know that the opportunity cost of one pizza for Deborah is 2. And for Mike, it is 1/3. I'm sorry, 1 pizza equals 3 wings. So basically, I have to pick a number between these two values. So the terms of trade was 19 pizzas for 47 wings. Let's see if this is really true. Mike is giving 90 pizza. I'm sorry, Deborah is giving 19 pizza to Mike, and in return, she's receiving 47 wings from Mike. So basically, for 19 pizza, she's receiving 47 wings. 19 pizza equals 47 wings. What I will do is, to make my job easier, I will divide 47 to 19. So basically, Deborah here, in her mind, she thinks that each pizza equals 2 wings. So Deborah gives 1 pizza to Mike, and in return, she's at least trying to receive 2 wings. But instead of receiving 2 wings, she's receiving 2.47 wings. So basically, she's better off. Same thing applies for Mike. So what Mike is trying to do is, he will give 3 wings to Deborah, and in return, he is planning to receive 1 pizza. But instead of giving 3 wings, he is giving 2.47 wings and receiving 1 pizza. So he's better off too. So the end result is, how I come up with these numbers is, we just need to calculate the opportunity cost of one good. For example, pizza in this case. And the value for Deborah is 2 wings, and the value for Mike is 3 wings. I have to find a value between 2 and 3. As long as you find a value between 2 and 3, not equal to 2, not equal to 3, you will have a gain from trade for both parties. Deborah will better off, Mike will better off as well. So this ratio, instead of using 2 and 3, numbers of 2 and 3, this ratio is doing the calculation from the other way around. instead of using the opportunity cost of pizza, this ratio is using the opportunity cost of wings. The same thing applies. In this case, the opportunity cost of wings for Deborah is 1/5 pizza. For Mike, it is For Deborah, opportunity cost of wings is 0.5 pizza, and for Mike, it is 0.33 pizza. So again, we have to find a value between these two main opportunity cost numbers, and we pick 0.40. So why we are picking a number just between, for example, 2 and 3, but not picking a number which is equals to 2? So what I'm trying to say is, I told you to create welfare increase. I told you to create a welfare increase for both parties. The terms of trade needs to be between these two opportunity costs, and it shouldn't be equal to 2 and 3. The idea is, I am trying to create more welfare, or I'm trying to make both parties better off. So I want both parties to receive more goods at the end of the trade. So we can add terms of trade which is also equal to 2 and 3. What happens if the terms of trade equals to 2? Remember, opportunity cost of one pizza for Mike, it's Deborah, was 2 wings. This is Deborah. Mike was 1 pizza. Opportunity cost was 3 wings. Let's assume that instead of choosing a number, we choose, before we choose that, 2.47. Instead of choosing that number, let's choose 2 right now. And let's try to understand what happens. For Deborah, 1 pizza is always equal to 2 wings. And if we choose a terms of trade which is equals to 2, basically Deborah will not gain anything from the trade, because she's going to give 1 pizza to Mike, and in return she's receiving exactly 2 wings. This is the opportunity cost for Deborah. This is what she was doing actually before. So basically, if you choose that terms of trade, Deborah will be indifferent. How about if I choose a terms of trade like 3? Of course, I mean 3 wings, 1 pizza for 3 wings. If this is the case, Mike will be indifferent, because for Mike, 1 pizza is always equal to 3 wings. So at the end of the trade, he's not going to be better off. So that's why the terms of trade conditions needs to be between these two numbers. In this case, in our example, it's 2 and 3. It might be equal to 2 and 3, but you need to know the little difference being equal or not. If x is not equal to 2 and 3, both terms will gain from the trade. But if x equals to 2 or 3, only one person will gain from the trade. That's the important difference that you need to know. So previously we noted the gains from trade and specialization. Terms of trade is actually the relative prices or the exchange rate of goods. So you give me 1 pizza, I give you 2 wings. That's what is terms of trade. Now let's try to do one example. In this question, we have again 2 parties, 2 people, and they are producing 2 different goods. And the numbers of the productions are given to you as before. Dwight is producing 6 salads and 3 steaks. Jim is producing 12 salads and 6 steaks. So the opportunity cost of salad and the opportunity cost of producing 1 steak is given to you for each person. And the question is asking you, given the same quantity of resources, at what terms of trade could they specialize and trade so that both consume outside their own production possibilities frontier? So basically, you have to find the terms of trade which makes both parties better off. So it cannot be equal to the extreme ends of the opportunity cost. And to solve this question easily, I would say you have to first check the options. In the options, as you can see, the answers are always steak per 1 salad. Steak per 1 salad. So basically, instead of, first of all, you have to decide which column you have to use. Do you need to use the opportunity cost of 1 salad or opportunity cost of 1 steak? Since the options are always per 1 salad, you have to use the opportunity cost of 1 salad column. So to find the terms of trade, you need to find a value which is between 1/3 and 1/2. And if you check the options, you will end up with the result of option B. 2/5 will become between 1/3 and 1/2. That's why the result should be B. In this slide, I want to introduce you a movie if you haven't watched before. The name of the movie is Castaway, and Tom Hanks is playing in that movie. Actually, if you click this bar, you will reach a small video about movie. This video, unfortunately, right now I cannot show that part of the movie because of the copyright problem on YouTube. But if you want to watch this movie, let me explain a little bit about movie. So this guy, Tom Hanks, is working in a huge cargo carrier firm, and one day he was trying to turn back to his home country from Russia to United States. Unfortunately, he had a plane accident, and his plane was just crashed really close to inhabited islands. So basically, he had to live in that island without anyone for several years. And he didn't know how to survive in the wild environment. He didn't know how to catch a fish. He didn't know how to create fire, this kind of stuff. So he had to do everything by himself. So he couldn't do any trades. He was specialized in cargo carrier sector, but that specialization was basically useless, so he had to do everything by himself, and throughout this time he had really tough life. So basically, specialization and trade makes your life easier. So pick a job, specialized on it, and sell your labor, sell your service or product, specialized product, and make trade. So the last topic we are going to cover is trade-off between present and future. So to understand this topic, first of all, you need to know what's consumer goods. You need to know capital goods. You need to know investments. And you also need to know, when you decide how much to consume, how this decision creates savings. And savings turns to capital and the growth in the future. Let's start with consumer goods. When I say consumer goods, you need to understand goods produced for current consumption. They might be food, housing, clothing, entertainment. The capital goods are goods that help produce other valuable goods. So they might be machineries, factories, buildings, roads, trucks, cars, computers. So these goods are used to produce consumer goods. So the next thing is investments. Investments, kind of a fund that you use to make new capital. And the cycle goes like that. Every month, let's say you receive 1,000 Turkish lira. So with this Turkish lira, with this amount, every month you decide on one thing only. You decide how much to consume. If you decided how much to consume, you also decided how much to save, and this is going to be saving. So what are you going to do with your saving? You're always, since you're a rational behavior, you will invest this money somewhere. And for simplicity, let's assume that you invest that money in a bank. So you put your money in a bank, and what does the bank do? Of course, to make money, bank needs to credit out or loan out your money. So this money will go to somewhere. This money is going to be used as investment money to create more capital goods. For example, there is a guy who is trying to build a new factory, but he needs money. So he goes to bank, he loan out some money. This money turns out to be investment, and he's going to use that money, the investment, to buy more, for example, trucks, cars, or computers. Then he's going to use that capital, he's going to use that machinery in his factory, and he will produce more. When? In the future, because you saved today, and this process will take time, and the increase in the production will happen in the future. So basically, if you save more today, your production as a whole country, imagine this process happens for every entrepreneur. So basically, your future growth of economy will increase. So that means if you consume more, since you are saving less, it will create low economic growth, or vice versa. And the same thing is, if you create less amount of capital, you will have less amount of economic growth. If you do less amount of investment, you will have less amount of economic growth. Same thing applies. Now let's turn back to our slides and let's try to understand what's going to happen. So in this two parts of the graphic, on the left hand side we have the short run production possibilities frontier. On the right hand side we have the long run production possibilities frontier. So what is short run and what does short run and long run mean? Short run is kind of a short run and long run, they are actually time periods. So for a whole economy, short run might be a 1 year, and the long run might be, let's say, 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years. So when we are talking about the short run and the long run, the time span differs on what kind of sector we are talking about. For example, if you're talking about the chocolate industry, maybe a couple days might be short run, but a week or a month will be a long run. However, if you're talking about automobile industry, 1 year or 2 years is short run, 5 and 10 years become long run. So basically what I'm trying to explain is short run and long run, there is time span, but this time span differs on what kind of sector, industry we are talking about. So in the short run, we have a PPF, and y-axis we have capital goods. We know that the capital goods will, if you have more capital goods, that means in the future you will have more economic growth. So basically we have two options: either we will consume or we will have more capital goods. If you consume more, that means you're saving less, which will, at the end of the cycle, which will give you less of capital goods. So let's pick one point here. At this point A, this country is consuming a lot. That means this country is not saving enough. The saving amount is really low. That's why it creates low amount of capital. And we know that for future growth, we need more capital goods. So on the right hand side of the graphic, let's see what's going to happen in the PPF in the future. So PPF, since we have less amount of growth, economic growth, PPF will shift to right, but the shift, the magnitude of the shift will be really low. Now in the second part of the graphic, let's again have the short run and the long run, but instead of being on a point like A here, like before, instead of consuming a lot, in this case, let's consume a little bit less, save more, and have more capital goods. So what's going to happen in the long run? Since in the short run, we saved a lot and we had more capital goods, that means in the future we will have more economic growth. So basically, the economy will grow more and the PPF will shift from both sides a lot more compared to the previous graphic. So basically, the end result is if you consume less and if you save more, you are basically going to grow a lot more in the future. Over the last 20 years, China and India have invested more capital compared to the United States. The result is China is actually sacrificing today's consumption for a better future. So they are not consuming today, they are saving because they think that they will become better in economic terms. And actually this is happening because China and India have higher growth rates compared to United States and Europe. They have better growth rates, economic growth rates compared to us. They are growing approximately 9% each year. And another trade-off is here, that's important, that's why I want to explain a little bit more. Chinese workers have less leisure time than American workers. So since Chinese workers are working a lot, consuming less, they don't have time. They are working all the time, all day maybe. That's why they don't have enough time, they don't have spare time to do their hobbies, to spend with their family. And that's causing some psychological problems. And that's not the case in the American workers. That's also another aspect that we have to compare and use. So let's see these practice questions. The first question is with regard to PPF, an efficient point is a point that is, of course, on the PPF. So that question, the answer of that question should be really obvious. That's why I'm moving to the second question. If we move down and to the right along a PPF, the opportunity cost of this movement can be measured in terms of what good? So let me open our scratch paper and I'm going to draw one PPF, a bow-shaped one. And let's say we have X good here and we have Y good here and we are moving from point A to point B. So if I'm moving from point A to B, that means I am producing more of the X good and less of the Y good. That's why I have to say opportunity cost of 1X is, I'm giving just an arbitrary number, let's say 10Y. So basically this is what I have to say. So let's check the options. In that option, which one is true? How much of the y-axis good we give up? So if we find the exactly same thing, we are producing one more of x and we are giving up 10y. Basically, the answer should be in terms of y. So that's the end of the week 2 topics. In the next week, we will try to understand the markets, what's demand, what's supply. Thank you for watching Akademi Ekonometri. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and like the video. I'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.